Hello, all. Welcome to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. So today we're going to be talking about It. Welcome to Derry, episode 4. We are about halfway through the season. Lots of twists and turns left to come, but so far I think it's been really great. So today we'll get into episode 4. So we start the episode with Lily, Will, Rich, and Ronnie on their bikes trying to get to the police department. So they're trying to get to the station because they want to hurry and get proof that they found from the last episode. So they took all of the pictures that they could to just show that they're not crazy and it's some form of proof that they really did see what they saw. We're trying to get Hank Grogan out of jail. Ronnie's trying to help her dad as much as she possibly can, and the other kids are on board. So they're trying to get to Chief Bauer's office. Once they get there, they show him the pictures. So as they're all kind of recounting what happened at the cemetery the night before, one of the things that I kind of noticed is they're speaking kind of as a unified voice. Now, obviously, Rich is doing a little bit too much chit chat, which is totally fine. But as we know, Pennywise wants to isolate you because that's kind of how it works best, right? Tries to get you away from safety. But I really like that this is kind of one of the first times that we see them unified as a team and also talking to an adult, right? So one thing that we know about what the fear does to the kids is it just keeps them in that space and they can't really ever escape it. And what fear is doing for the adults is it kind of makes them forget, like they just are aiding it in all of its chaos. And this was kind of a cool moment because we're going to see them really acting as a unified team later on. But anywho, they're talking to Chief Bowers, and they decide to show him the pictures. Now, as they are talking, they kind of mention or let it slip that they were in the cemetery. Chief Bowers asks, okay, well, what the hell are y'all doing in a cemetery? And Ronnie and Will very quickly let Chief Bowers know, hey, no, we were just cutting through, taking a little shortcut. So they give him the packet of pictures that they developed at the school. He and a couple of officers in his office are looking at the photos. And at first, it looks like they're seeing what the kids are seeing. So they're going through all these things. They're trying to make out what they can make out from looking at the pictures, only to slam them on the table and ask, hey, is this pigeon shit? So, unfortunately, they don't see what the kids saw. And keep in mind, obviously we're the audience, so we know what's going on. But the thing about the adults in Derry, for the most part, they're not going to see that kind of stuff. Or if they do, they just pretend that they don't. So the kids are freaked out. They're really upset because they have taken the opportunity to tell the truth finally. I mean, we saw Lily end up back at Juniper Hill because people still think that she's crazy, even though we know that she's telling the truth. So they flip through a few more of the photos, but they get to the last one. Now, the last photo is the one that Will took right next to the crypt. So you see this very, very, very blurry, creepy image of that clown, right? Not exactly like the Pennywise that we know with the red curled hair and the big forehead, but just a different version of a very eerie clown. I have some theories about that too. But it's very much there, and the adults also see that. But I don't know if this is intentional, but there was kind of a look on Chief Bauer's face when Will pointed it out and said, hey, you don't notice this clown? It's a clown. To which Chief Bauer says, it's a statue. So it'll be really interesting to see the four of them band together again because now, and keep in mind, at this point, Lily has had a run-in with it. Ronnie has had a run-in with it. And then Rich and Will have not had direct run-ins with it just yet. But this was pretty significant because Will didn't believe it until he saw the clown. He didn't, Chief Bowers is obviously not sure that the kids are telling the truth. He pretty much thinks it's BS. I mean, and again, he did kind of plot and scheme against Lily, which had her end up back at Juniper Hill. But he kind of quips that, oh, you kids all had a camera on you, while you were just, happened to be in a cemetery. To which Ronnie responded, we were ready for him. And that's a really important point, too, because they are getting closer and closer to uncovering something. Now, that is figuratively and literally what Dick and Leroy and the men on the base have been working on, literally uncovering something. Now, if we remember what was uncovered in episode 2, was that, I guess, Studebaker or whatever old car that was with those corpses inside of it. So they're definitely getting closer. Episode 3, we saw Dick finally see Pennywise's lair, and the brightness of his eyes popped out, and he saw, not out, but but Dick was able to see the eyes of Pennywise and speak to his late grandmother. So there's a lot of uncovering of truth going on. And so that was one of the common themes too that I thought was telling the truth at whatever cost, because they all know that the adults don't believe him, and they figure, you know what, we might as well tell you the truth because you've already thrown Lily into Juniper Hill twice. So we shoot back to Derry High. So they're having, I guess, in like a history class, there is a film on the projector, which as a millennial, I kind of remember the progression from the old school projectors to like the digital. Anyway, I've already aged myself. That's not the point. Stay on task. They're watching an instruction video on what to do in case of an atomic bomb explosion. Now, if you know, there was a terrible explosion at an orphanage. Terrible explosion. And so just dismembered kids everywhere. And actually, if you look in the opening credits, there's a huge explosion in an orphanage, and you see the actual image of it and kids running out in horror. So as those kids are sitting there calmly and watching this, that's obviously a nod to that incident. I thought it was kind of interesting too how they're just all kind of sitting there like zombie-like and not really paying attention, but unfortunately we know what happens, so maybe it doesn't matter if they don't pay attention. Back at the Hanlon house, Charlotte is reading the newspaper, and there's a headline that grabs her, reading, "Local Negro arrested in connection with missing children." Now, as you know, Hank Grogan owns the movie theater, and although he was not at the movie theater that night, we don't know where he was. He didn't want to tell Chief Bowers when he went to see him in his cell, and we still have to figure out where he actually was, because unfortunately, small town, 1962, African American man in any connection to murder, they're trying to like make sure that it sticks to him. So we hear a knock at the door, and it's Rose and Daniel, and they're coming to drop off some stuff from Rose's shop, and Charlotte invites Rose in for coffee. Rose does let Charlotte know, though, that things do happen from time to time. And again, this is because of the lore that she already knows about and has learned about her whole life. And again, we know that there's a true just respect for the sort of imminent force that it is. And yeah, I thought that was just a little like subtleties in their conversation and little looks that Charlotte and Rose had like or shared with one another in the conversation, even without saying anything. I think really it's a great way to keep you engaged into like what's happening. Anywho, in the next scene we see Dick and Leroy driving to like a little secluded wooded area, and this is an old requisition shack off of like the military base, and they have special permission to like be there, but they don't know like that it's for a place for the African American soldiers to just hang out and to unwind and to just have a place where they don't ever have to worry about a whites only or a coloreds only. They want something for themselves. They want to be able to be in a space where they can let go. Because think about it, they're fighting for our country, and so it's unfortunate that those spaces made them feel so unwelcome. But to General Shaw, it was just like a nothing little shack. And so Dick is in there with the guys, and they're gonna like tidy it up and grab the pictures that all the kids had developed. And unfortunately, somebody else has already got to it. His mom. Now, his mom has also kind of noticed some weird stuff going on in Derry too. And although Leroy thinks that she's like making a fuss and doing all this stuff, she's not making a fuss for no reason. She also wants to get to the bottom of it, because it's not just everyday regular things that they have to deal with. there's just something underlying. There's something behind. There's a deadness behind the smile. There's an emptiness behind the eyes. So Charlotte sees the pictures, and Will's kind of freaked out a little bit, but she assures him that, like, hey, I don't know what this is, but you can tell me, you can talk to me about what's going on. And so this is another thing too, where the theme continues of telling the truth at whatever cost. So this is something that Will is just like, you know what, I don't know who I can talk to about this, because as we know, Will's a science guy. So Will loves knowing things that make sense to him, that are logical, that are reasonable, and that come from somewhere. And he still can't quite make sense of this, even though he and the other kids had a run-in with it in the cemetery. So he's rightfully not sure that his mom is going to believe him. But I think this moment is really important too, because it does something that I really, really, really love in movies like this, where like the kid is the protagonist, and the adults are kind of like antagonist slash protagonist, or like someone who supports the kid. But when the kid is a protagonist and the kid's going through something, inner turmoil, puberty, whatever, right? There's a tendency for adults to ignore kids. And I think that there's a lot of trust that Will has in his mom, but also like that Charlotte has in her son. Like, he's not a bad kid. He's not getting into trouble. And even if he was getting into any trouble, it wouldn't necessarily make him a bad kid. But there's a bond between the two of them that I think is going to kind of just blossom into something really beautiful, because she knows that, not only does she know that something is going on, because all moms know that anyway, like, there's something more about her wanting to do what she can. She's not just meddling for no reason. She genuinely is trying to help. We also learned later in the episode that she was an advocate back in Louisiana. And we know for a fact that she's not just meddling with things or kicking up dust. She wants to make sure that she can help, because if it's her kid, it could be anyone's kid. And of course, all of the adults are on high alert after what happened in the movie theater anyway. So they have that little exchange, and I thought that it was a really great little moment to have between the two of them. Now, we from there go to the dinner table. Leroy, Charlotte, and Will having dinner, kind of talking about their day a little bit, and Charlotte and Will are kind of exchanging eyes to one another. And then Will doesn't really want to talk about his day, and Charlotte kind of lets it out that there's a little girl that he's interested in or whatever, just to kind of glaze it over. Which, again, that's that trust thing that I was talking about. She doesn't want to say too much, because she knows that he's a little bashful about something. But it's more than her just knowing like that. It's the fact that she knows that what he could possibly say is gonna be pretty powerful. So they have that little exchange. Will asks to be excused to go to his room, and he goes to his room. Now, Charlotte and Leroy have a little conversation about, the two of them finally getting a chance to hang out, like Leroy used to do with his dad. And so, next thing you know, Leroy and Will are fishing. So, they are at the river. They're having a cute little talk. Leroy asks about his girlfriend. And it's a great father-son moment. Again, this sets up something that's really important, is the trust that a child can have with an adult in general, and specifically the trust that a child can have with their parent, right? That exchange of trust. Will throws out the line and he catches something. It gets away. Whatever, fine. Next thing you know, Leroy needs to go to the car to go get more bait. He leaves. The cinematography too was actually really cool, the way that they shot this. But next thing you know, we see this odd looking fish. This white and red striped fish, which I already knew was going to be like a trip. But next thing you know, Will is staring at this fish, and the fish is sort of staring at him. The fish dips back down and wriggles away into water, and next thing you know, a scorched hand just comes out of the water and pulls him in. And he's fighting and he's fighting and he's trying to breathe, and he looks into the eyes of an image of his dad. His skin all burned, grabbing him, looking him into the eyes with just bright yellow eyes, and tells Will that you'll burn too. Now, Will is screaming, and as Leroy is in the car, at the car, he drops the bait and runs to go help his son. And after that, he picks him up, he helps him up, he tries to get him to calm down. And Will says, "It was you, it was you." This is a moment where Leroy's face just dropped. Now, Leroy may or may not be as intuitive as Charlotte, but that's hearsay, right? The minute that Will says that to him, just the look in Will's face, Leroy knows something is wrong. Then you see Will pan slowly to his left to see a red balloon floating. Leroy takes that same pan, Will to his right, whatever, and sees the same balloon. Again, though, this is really important. Leroy actually saw the balloon. Now, the officers earlier, like in the episode, who saw the pictures that the kids took, they could have been lying and saying that they didn't see anything, but I genuinely think that because they're adults, they probably didn't see anything. Leroy saw that balloon just like Will did. So I thought that was a really important moment because now the kids are starting to get a glimpse of who they can and cannot trust. So I think that that's really great. And like I said, the mid-season trailer looked awesome. So I'm excited for the rest of the season. But anyway, we're going to keep on going. So we go back to the old requisition shed where Dick, Hanlon, and the guys are sprucing it up. There's a piano in there. They're talking about all the things that they're going to do, all the fun they're going to have once it's all spruced up. Then Dick goes outside, take out some trash, and he has this really, really intense, like, psychic flash. He has all of these memories come to him. Now, whether or not they're his memories or not remains to be seen, but it's more intense than what we've seen so far in any of the episodes. So his shining is really working in a way that is like kind of confusing him because it was just sort of out of nowhere. Next thing you know, in the distance, Dick sees the ghost of his grandmother. Now, we saw her ghost, and she spoke to him last episode when he was in the air carrier and was hovering over that slingshot, right? So she's back again. Now, his grandmother was the person who told him that he had the shining. She believed in his psychic ability. She was someone that he could trust. So when he sees her, he knows that something's wrong. But he's also just trying to do his job, or at least to the best of his ability without hurting anybody. He works for the U.S. government. There's not a whole lot he can do. And again, he's a colored man in the 60s in a small town. So a lot of these things kind of come into play with one another. Next, we see Leroy kind of pull it up, and he goes to talk to Dick about what happened at the river with Will. Again, they're trying to establish trust with one another. It's still a little shaky because Dick really is just so focused on doing what he's doing for the U.S. government and his special privileges and like the special project that he's working on. But Leroy's kind of doing the same thing, except he's more left in the dark. He really doesn't know what's going on. And he tells Dick what happened at the river. So things get a little heated, and Leroy just asks Dick, like, hey, like, what the hell are we even looking for? And Dick is just like, no, I'm doing what I'm told, you know? And I can understand where he's coming from because he doesn't want to ruffle any feathers, especially as somebody with psychic ability, which I'm questioning if Lily has. I need to like reread the book. But the reason I even say that is because it could slip if he were to be a whistleblower, right? And it slipped. Him having psychic abilities could land him in Juniper Hill. So I can understand their viewpoint, but again, Leroy believes he can trust Dick. And again, Leroy knows that he saw what he saw. When he saw that red balloon, he saw exactly what Will saw. So he knows that it's more than what they're saying is going on. Charlotte makes her way back to the police station to talk to one of the officers because she now has a little permission form signed by Hank's mom that it is okay to go in and talk to him. The officer gives her a bunch of crap, saying, the chief's not in, and yeah, you have to just come back or you have to wait. And Charlotte does something really, just really great to me. She just very calmly lets him know who she is and what she's about. She's going to advocate for this man no matter what. And she even threatens him that she'll call MLK, JFK, RFK, or any other FK that she can. And that's just not what you want her to do, friend. And it isn't. So she gets an opportunity to go back and talk to Hank. Now, Hank's in there. He knows he doesn't, or he knows he hasn't done it. Charlotte pretty much figures he hasn't done it. And she says, hey, I want to advocate for you. You just have to tell me the truth. You have to tell me the truth. Hank doesn't want to tell her the truth because we find out Hank was messing around with someone. Not just any someone. He was hanging out with a married white woman. Now, again, we keep talking truth and trust and the uncovering of truth and the breaking of trust, right? It's not so much that he should be punished for murder because we know that that's not, he didn't do it. But when Hank tells Charlotte this, you can just tell the disappointment. Not so much that she doesn't trust him, but it's just what the truth can do sometimes. But the way that it is used in this moment is still really important because now Charlotte has to. I talked about this in episode 2 review because we know that the indigenous people have respected the land, and that is really important. You have to respect the natural balance of things. You can't just go around, or you shouldn't go around digging for things, right? Because you never know what you're going to uncover. You never know what truth you're going to uncover. You never know what trust you will break after uncovering that kind of thing. So he sees Taniel, recognizes that it is Rose's nephew. And then we cut to the next scene.